Oi, oi! So, this is the second sort of Antepost Insight video that I'm doing. Basically, this is start of the season views. Last year I did it a little bit earlier. It was Augusty time. I have put the video up yesterday of the People's Choice. That's the vote of the Facebook followers and the selections they had for certain races. But I just wanted to give my view on things as it stands. That's had a reasonable response. I appreciate the support. Any new people that are on the channel, there's been a handful of extra subscribers, but if you could just do me a favour and just click subscribe, it doesn't cost you anything, does me a little bit of a favour. And yeah, I'm going to go give my views on each of the races. Now, people from last year will know about Anti-Up. That was a show that I did with Matt. That was, I think, reasonably successful. I think we did all right. We both made profit out of it. This year, we won't be doing that again. It's a lot of commitment for Matt and I. We both work full time. So I appreciate Matt spending as much time as he did last year doing it. I am going to do something for Antepost, sort of like tipping as the season goes on. There's another video I've put on before. I'm talking about the fact that I won't be betting Antepost like I was before, or maybe even not at all. But I can still give you my view, my stance, and my view of where we are, and the ones that I would maybe suggest if you were that way inclined. And yeah, so I will be putting some sort of anti-up thing out there. The season's just only about to start ramping up in it. We've got some decent racing this weekend, but then the weekend after we've got Cheltenham, Punchestown. So, you know, without further ado, I don't want to deliberate too much. I just want to get onto the horses in each race and the races that I fancy and what not's in there. So, Supreme Novices Hurdle, obviously the best place to start. I'll pull up the whole market view for this one just because it shows a little bit of a difference in where the prices are. Obviously, we've got top prices in there. Not necessarily everybody can get on, and not necessarily every bookie offers cash out options. That may be relevant in some of the suggestions or things that I may say as we go on. May not. I haven't really planned too much for this. So obviously, Kilcrit has found his way to the top of the market. Over the summer, I think a lot of people were expecting that he would step up in Trip and Sir Go Hard would be the 2 mile horse. Willie Mullins has all but confirmed it's the other way round. And I say all but confirmed. He said it in a column, but you never know what's going to happen as the season goes on. One thing just to chuck in right off the top of this, the let's say the show, is like we know 7-year-olds in the Supreme don't necessarily do so well. Appreciate it last year, obviously did go and win that. I don't even think it's arguable, is it? It was a pretty weak 2 mile hurdling division last year. There was a few injuries and a few horses that didn't make the festival that would have made it a better race. But that's not to take anything away from Appreciate It. Won it like an absolute monster. Also with the Ballymore, 7-year-olds don't win it. Champ came second. There's another one that came second not so long back before as well, which I touched on when I was talking with Darryl about this a few years back. I want to say French Holly's the last 7-year-old that won it, but I can't really remember for definite. That's terrible from me, innit? But basically all I'm saying is Sir Gerhard, Kilcrit, that obviously were first and second in the bumper, that are respectively favourites for the Ballymore or the Supreme in the Ballymore. They're both going to be 7 next year. So not saying that's a reason to completely and utterly take them on, but it is something to take into consideration. Like, we look at Antepost prices, and you want to have a little bit of juice in there. Like I say, most people would have thought that Kilcrit was maybe a 2.5 mile horse, and he's 4-5 to 1 favourite for a Supreme. You just got to really take that in consideration, haven't you? And this is like a side part of why I'd wanted to take some time out from Antepost punting, because there was a few ridiculous prices last year, which albeit sort of paid off, but I don't know, there's a bit too much squeeze going on in there. So I think that's just worth mentioning at the start for the Supreme side of things. I wouldn't have a ridiculously strong opinion at this, like the standing point. I do think that Kilcrit was the better horse of the 2 bumper ones. He had that second season as a bumper horse, didn't he? Because he ran for Tony Mullins the season before, where he was told at the races or the Sky preview night that he was definitely going to mop up in a bumper, and he didn't. He got him beat. They obviously pursued bumpering again with him as opposed to going hurdling. I think he's going to be a horse that's going to make a big chaser. So, not saying it's definitely the reason why those two were such a stand apart duo in the bumper division last year, but they were both that little bit older and stronger. When it comes into these sort of novice hurdling spheres, it can be a good thing, because, like, I think with Appreciate It, he was maybe physically more forward than some of the other 2 milers, but like I say, it was a pretty poor division. But maybe they could get so they could get sort of caught up with some of those hurdlers in behind. So in terms of looking at Kilcrit at the price that he is, like, I know people will be on a bit bigger prices, but I didn't back Valtor when he was 9-2 on the day to win it, and we talk about a horse that's 4-5-1 this far out. Like, I'm not having it. He's way too short. I don't really see the fascination with John Bond being such a short price. Like, I get the breeding and I get all the cooing noises that come out from Nicky Henderson, but another one that is tiny, tiny short. Like, remember back in the day when Animix was favourite for the Supreme every single year, like 16s and 12s at this time of the season, that horse was. Admittedly, we know that he didn't go and do it, but I just mean these hype horses. Like, we haven't even seen either of these jump a hurdle yet, and they're single digits. Even Cigar, that potentially is going to go Ballymore, might step back down. Like, they're terribly short prices. So from an Antepost punting perspective, you'd want to be on them very, very early, but I'm trying to think and hope that there might be a little bit of value further down the field. Is there or isn't there? That's the question, I suppose. I don't really get too excited about loads of these horses. There is a Willie Mullins horse. I was reading through his stable tour, as you do, because you've got to try and get a little bit of info. I try and maybe read into stuff that's not there, but I try and read his comments and see how it's written and see if I can take something from it. But I try and watch the video clips as well, so you can sort of get his tone and his body language. He was talking about Classic Getaway and Grange Clare West together, saying they both won bump at the end of last season, which is like a sort of a normal thing for a Mullins horse to do. Like, they may bumper at the end of the year and then go and hurdle straight away. Like, he's not really, I know he does well in the bumpers, but he's not renowned for holding them back just for the sake of holding them back. But anywho, Grange Clare West, he was saying, was very impressive when winning at Punchestown. He shows plenty at home as well, so doing it on the track and at home's good. We know that he says Ramillies does loads at home, and we never see that on the course. He reckons he'll be going the shorter route and saying he could be a supreme novice hurdle horse. So we saw obviously the reaction from the stable tour that came out before. You can see here, like, Paddy Power and Betfair have gone blue. I don't know when the price changed, and then we can pull it up on here to see what the date was. So yeah, it was 33s yesterday. So they've been snipped in a little bit. They do offer cash outs, don't they? But Grange Clare West, potentially, like we know Willie Mullins does really well in the race, he farms it. Grange Clare West could be one at a bigger price that I guess people would have on their team sheets. I wasn't particularly blown away by My Mate Mozzie for Gavin Cromwell that everybody else was. Mighty Potter, again, like, didn't beat a lot in the field, did he? We'll have to see. We'll find out more after. I know they talked about going for the Royal Bond with him, but they've talked about that with other horses from the yard, like Three Stripe Life as well, that sound like maybe that's held in higher regard. So really, as it stands, I know I've warbled quite a lot, but for the Supreme, there wouldn't really be anything that I'd be looking to get stuck into. As it stands this far out, I'd be happy to wait. A lot of these Supreme winners make their hurdle debuts sort of November, December-y time, so very likely we haven't seen them out yet. I'd just be interested to see what happens. Like, Nicky Henderson's got a nice horse running at Newbury tomorrow, Broomfield Berg. I think he's got quite a few nice novice hurdlers. We'll have to see how they go. I know a lot of people are cooing about I Am Maximus. I know he beat my Drogo, and that bumper probably does look like quite good form, but again, he's had a few niggly little issues, and I'd rather my horse was coming straight from season to season than having those little bits, and I'd like to see him go and do it. We saw the form lines with that Good Risk at All that ran today at Chepstow. He was green as anything, but goes and gets beat. So not necessarily because they won a bumper that's had winners in behind means they're a weapon, but obviously he's on the radar for the right reasons. So we'll slide over to the ARKLE. Now, this is a race that year after year, we've got more information than we would have in a novice hurdler. I know it's a novice division, but it's chasers. Normally, it's fairly straightforward to pinpoint the horses that are likely to be going and winning these types of races. You got the Supreme form that's like sort of stand out for it, and then you just got the better class of hurdlers that might go in there. So you can see why I appreciate it is Fav. You could argue, is he too short? Well, Shishkin was 4-1 in August last year without really much in behind that was going to be of a danger to him, because Envoy was never going to step back into it, was not the thought. So yeah, didn't really have any dangers. Appreciate it probably hasn't really got any dangers. You can't imagine Bob Odinger's going to drop back in trip. Fernie is interesting because I think Fernie would make a better chaser. I still don't know what they're going to do with him, because he mentioned about they could always drop back for hurdles. He's only had that one hurdle start. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but with him having a bit of a setback and them giving him time off, I mean, you would have thought they'd bring him back for Punchestown if it wasn't too major an issue. I don't know, Willie Mullins is the best man for the job, but I like Fernie. I don't see Fernie and Appreciate going up against each other. He's got Blue Lord as well over 2 mile that he's going to run, so he's going to have to mix these horses about a little bit. We all thought that Appreciate was going to be a stay-in hurdler, and obviously he didn't need to be last year, and he was real good in that Supreme division. Like, don't get me wrong, he was an absolute aeroplane winning that race. You can see why he's the price that he is, and again, I can imagine people have got him in multiples. A few people may have snapped a little bit of bigger prices in the summer, but I'd say he's the most likely horse to win the race. But I don't know. I wouldn't want to be investing this far out on a horse like him. He's very skinny, and I know you could argue the 4-1 Shishkin and then the 3-1 this year. Like, there's not that much difference between the pair of them, but like it's a big percentage price drop down, isn't it? When it's a point when you've got a 4-1 into a 3-1 poke. If you get 33s into 25, it's not quite the same percentage chance reduction. So I feel like he's potentially short enough. I don't think there's like Third Time Lucky was very good at Cheltenham. We can't get that wrong, but it was 131 rated hurdler that was in behind. Skelton horses tend to peak earlier in the season, but I just don't know what you'd be looking at for some juicy value in the ARKLE market. I don't think you'd really want to be taking Appreciate on this early in the season. We'll see how things would go with him, but it looks it's going to be an interesting division anyway, isn't it? More so for the fact of what happens with the Mullinsy horses, but we could probably look back at this in a little while and say that the 3-1 Appreciate was monster. Couldn't potentially put people off sticking him in some multiples or whatever, but it wouldn't be the way that I'd want to play it this far out. Like, I wouldn't just be desperate to get him on my team sheet at 3-1 just for the sake of getting him in, but I know previous years I may have felt slightly differently about that. We can honestly, another thing just to touch on with Appreciate it. Like, I touched on the year thing with the Supreme, like it isn't a major sticking point when it's a Willie Mullins horse. Now, I know that sounds probably a little bit gross to comment, but Willie Mullins just is the money shot at Cheltenham in these. He does well in the handicaps, but the non-handicap races, like, I don't know, I can't remember how many it is, like another quick feel, I think, but the likes of like Gordon Elliott, that's classed as a big trainer, and we can't disregard that. Obviously, he's lost a couple of horses, but if we look at Gordon Elliott in the non-handicaps, I could be wrong, but I think he's had 12 wins in the last 10 years, like outside the handicaps, and 4 of those are coming in the National Hunt Chase. So he had LeBake in the Supreme, didn't he? He hasn't won an ARKLE. He won the JLT with Shattered Love. I don't know. I'm just sort of pieballing there that like Willie Mullins is the guy to be on with. With the age thing, it's just, well, the reason I mentioned it is because Size in Europe, I believe, was the last 8-year-old to win the ARKLE, and again, Appreciated did what he did, didn't he? Went and dotted it up. I don't see why he couldn't go and smash up in the ARKLE. So one horse that I did forget to mention in the ARKLE, I think this is the only one that I've missed out, was Saint War. So again, like I say, the wise guy thing over and over again, but it was a bit of a wise guy horse for a champion hurdle last year. Like, they fancied him to make the step up in grade 2. Champion hurdle horse. Didn't quite work out, but he's talking about the fact that they still rate the horse. They think the world of him. He's going to have a crack at fences, and that he could potentially be an ARKLE type horse. Now, I'm not saying that this is the way that it's definitely going to pan out, but I'm talking about Willie Mullins being mob-handed in ARKLE. This is another horse that ticks a few boxes of interest, at least. Sort of more footpad-esque, where he had the failed champion hurdle campaign. But he's a 33-1 poke. That's available with cash out. I'd be tempted to look at that, because as soon as he goes novice chasing, you'd think this is the sort of route that they could go down with him. And again, we don't know. Appreciate could step up. Fernie could stay injured for this year. I just think Saint War at 33s, I needed to make sure that he was mentioned. And I think 33s with the cash outs, very tempting. The champion hurdle side of things, probably going to be quite boring. Like, Honeysuckle should win the champion hurdle. Again, the real elephant in the room is what Willie Mullins will do with the likes of a Fernie Hollow and Appreciate it. I don't like the 4-year-olds going up and running the champion hurdle as a 5-year-old. We've sort of been through this before. And I think when you start going through the market, like Echoes and Rain was the mare's novice hurdle, you'd think she's going to go mare's hurdle. Fernie and Appreciate, we know, I think potentially one of them might come here. Epatton, like, just maybe not the force of old. Bob Oddinger, we know, is going chasing. We haven't seen him jump a fence yet, but obviously is what it is. Sharjah, like he could take a step forward, and Willie Mullins talk about doing some extra stuff. So I think he'll be like the sort of wise guys one at a big price, but I'm not interested. I'm not backing Antepost anyway. And then, like I said, we're talking about these 4-year-olds going 5-year-olds. Like, I just don't see them. I don't even think Monroe necessarily would run it. I don't think Nichols is too fussed about it. I know Zana here was good, but he needs to step up in trip. Abracadabra definitely needs to step up in trip. And we're talking further and further down here about horses like Blue Lord's going chase, and I think Hoot and Coolier's Willie Munters talk about going chasing with him as well. Like, there just isn't anything up here really at all that's there to oppose Honeysuckle. But again, plenty short enough, a lot of water under the bridge between now and Cheltenham, and to be getting some real juice in the value, you've either got to be sticking them in some sort of dream weaver, which means you're adding more risk by adding more horses, or you lump them, and then it's not. I wouldn't be smashing into something this far out of a festival. If you're backing Antepost the way that I do, like quite scattergun, then I spread on so many different things that even if you were to lump this, I don't know, let's just, for my argument's sake, at £25 a point is normally roughly where I'll start. The amount of bets that I'll put on through the season, I'll probably end up with about £5 worth of bets. Someone like this, I might have 500 quid on, but that's 10% of the whole book. And I say I might have £500, like I've never done that before. Like I might have a couple of £100 would probably be more likely where I'd go. And then you look at that and it's much smaller percentage of your total bank. So people might want to stick a couple of £100 on there now, but in the scheme of how much like percentage for your Antepost book that'd be, I think you need to be betting thousands to be warranting those things. But again, it's different things with different people in it. Mare's Hurdle, I'm not too really fussed about talking on, to be honest. I'm just going to swerve straight past that. National Hunt Chase, I think fairly interesting in here. A few like sort of obvious ones and talking points. I do mention this a few times, but I like block bets, and I think this far out, if you're able to whittle the right sort of profile horses into something, then you can potentially put them in block bets. The point of a block bet is that you might pick 2, 3, 4 horses in a particular race, and then you pick 2, 3, 4 horses in another race, and then you can block the doubles up. Depending on the number of selections, you just times it by the first and the second. That's how many doubles there would be, and then you might get 2 33-1 winners. So it paid quite nicely for relatively small stakes. Horses I'll be mentioning here aren't probably 33-1 pokes. Statler looks the obvious one. Willie Mullins has talked about the fact that he's staying, like tripping everything's like is everything to him, and he is classy. But like he could be an RSAE type horse, although Willie Mullins has probably got maybe a better option in there. But like I think Statler's good, and this could be the sort of race that would go on with him. Runwell Fred looks the obvious one, second season chaser, so get that, and it's the Gordon Elliott, and like I say, Gordon Elliott does do well in this type of race as well. On the ropes, I'm not overly sold on. I think there was talk of him maybe going for the race last year. So again, like the second season novice aspect jumps in a little bit there. Although I don't think he was so great last season, was he? The Boss's Oscars there as well. Hasn't been great over fences so far. Vanillier was maybe poor that first time up. There's a couple I want to talk at bigger prices. So Capodano for Willie Mullins. Now this was a horse that was touted about a little bit before as a nice type. In his comments, Willie Mullins has said, and I'll read it. I mean, I could have put it up on the screen, couldn't I? But I'll just read it as it is. A lovely, big, long striding horse, and every inch a staying chaser in my book. So Willie Mullins is loving that. He'll start out over fences. Well, obviously, if he's a staying chaser. And he's a horse I'd imagine lots of jockeys will want to ride. He just does things so effortlessly. So when you hear comments like that, lots of jockeys will want to ride, I think he's more talking Patrick. Do you know the novice, obviously the National Hunt Chase is an amateur rider's race. It makes me feel like Capodano could be one for the race. So at 20s, he would be one that I'd be interested in, at least for a block bet perspective. And then another one that's like, I don't even think it's that absurd. Dicky Diver for Nicky Henderson. A lot of people fancied that to win any race at Cheltenham or to maybe do well in the National Hunt Chase. And he did shorten up. And again, he's got the experience over fences. I know they say he's not straightforward and he has issues and things like that, which is something that I'd normally go against. But 33s, like I'd want to get him on side if I was betting Antepost. So I don't know, maybe, like I say, from the obvious ones and a couple at prices, you could stick a Dicky Diver in there. You could stick a Capodano in there, and then you could look at a Statler and a Run Wild Fred. I do really like Farouk Deland, but I'm terrified that he needs bad ground to run well. So he could end up being there for it. But I don't know. Maybe that those sort of four would be on my radar for this now. It's a long way to get there, but I don't know. We'll have to see. I think Capodano and Dicky Diver, if I was suggesting anything, would be the ones that maybe have a second look at. The Ballymore, so we've already talked, I've already talked about the 7-year-old thing in a Ballymore. shouldn't be enough to necessarily put people off. And like I say, it doesn't bother me so much when it's Willie Mullins. That is what Sir Gerhard and Kilcrook both are. There's not too much really further down that from this far out that really gets me going, to be honest with you. Like, I'd rather see these horses run in and try and squeeze a little bit of value as they go in. I'd be looking to take on Sir Gerhard just because of the fact that he wasn't able to back it up at Punchestown, was he? I think he just got the right ride at Cheltenham, and like I say, maybe because of the age that he was entitled to be a bit further forward than some of the others. No Ordinary Joe for Nicky Henderson. Now, he was quite smart. He got him beat in a half decent novice hurdle over here, but none of the novice hurdles over here were that great, were they? Let's be honest, unless the Irish won them. And then he managed to lose his maiden tag, but after the season started. So he's kept his novice status for this year, and I think he looks like a middle trip type of horse. There's only a couple of bookies that have quoted him up here, which is semi-disappointing, I guess, for people that were looking to have a bet. But No Ordinary Joe would be one that I wouldn't probably be betting this far out, but he'd be one I'd be having on my eye. This Broomfield Berg's going to run tomorrow at Newbury as well, so I suspect he could run well and you could start seeing some money come in for him. Fire Step was a nice bumper horse again. Nicky Henderson, again, could be middle trip-ish. So I think that like Willie Mullins is always the one that you want to look for the novice hurdlers, just as your starting point, and then you can sort of work around that. I think Elliott's lost a couple of horses, although he has still kept a couple. He tends to mop up over in Ireland in the October month because Willie maybe saves some of his bigger dogs until November and Christmas. But yeah, there isn't anyone overly exciting me for a Ballymore this far out. I'm just maybe more keen to just look at Sir Gerhard and just think I can't have it. And I still don't know with the Kilcrook thing where he's going to go, if I'm brutally honest. And I know they're going to go down the Supreme route with him, but we'll just have to see what pops up. There's always some newbies out there. There's always horses that we maybe haven't seen the best of over in bumpers that come forward and improve for it. So nothing overly exciting in the Ballymore this far out for me. The RSA, we're not calling it the Festival of Novices Chase, what a ridiculous thing. So earlier in the season, Kevin Blake had a sit down with Paul Nicholls. He talked about with Brave Man's Game, and we know Nicholls. It sounds horrific, but I don't think he really cares about Cheltenham as much as other people. Like, he just cares about winning races, which is fine. And if he's got a Cheltenham horse, then happy days. He'll go and mop up with them. Now, he did say that Harry Cobden was shocked by how good Bob Ollinger was because they thought he was travelling really well in there. When I was talking about Gordon Elliott having those winners at Cheltenham in the last 10 years, for Paul Nicholls, when it's a little bit further back than the last 10, I could include a few older ones in there. Big Bucks has got 4 of them, but he's only got 12 wins outside of the handicaps in the last sort of 12 years, maybe 13 years. So I don't know. He doesn't really target the festival, does he? And the comments he had with Kevin Blake at the start of the season was he wasn't even overly stressed that he was going to stretch him for 3 miles this season. So we'll see how things go. He obviously won the RSA with Top of the Game not so long ago. I'd like to think that this horse is in a similar mould to that. The better form, Top of the Game, came in off the back of cruising and travelling really well in a Coral Cup. And obviously Brave Man's Game's travelled really nicely in a Ballymore, which I don't know whether that's better form or not. But Brave Man's Game I like. Galopin de Champs, yes, the Willie Mullins thing. But again, like, you look, Monkfish was 10-1 for this race last year, and Galopin de Champs is 8s or 6s in other places. Like, I think he's plenty skinny enough. Given the fact it was only a handicap he won at Cheltenham, and I don't want to like poo-poo that too much. We know some horses have won handicaps and they come and won big races after, but yeah, we want to see a bit from him, really, don't we, before anything happens. When we drop a little bit further down, I don't know what they'll do with my Droger, but he's not one I'm overly excited about this season. There's a lot of horses that won't be necessarily chasing this season, so we'll have to see where things go. Statler's obviously there at a massive price because he's probably more likely to go for the National Hunt Chase route, but I don't know, we'll just have to see how classy he is. It's one of those, again, that I don't want to keep echoing about what happened last year with the novice hurdlers, but the novice hurdle divisions last year didn't look great. I mean, Bob Ollinger, Brave Man's Game in that race looked fairly steady, to be fair, but I wasn't overly sold by it, so maybe that's why. I know he dotted up at Punchestown, but maybe that's why Galopin de Champs is the price it is. But like, I wouldn't want to put people off of backing him or put him in their multiples, but I don't know. I'd rather see him run and back him at half the price than than get stuck in now. The problem might be like with Envoy last year that they're not really going to run against anything of significant note, and the price is just going to shrink without them doing it. And you'd rather find out, wouldn't you? You'd rather see them get tested a bit. You get all types of trainers that win this race, and I think we'll just see as the season goes on. Like, there'll be something that will catch our eye as the season goes through. That I don't know. Maybe will spring up like a bit of a surprise, but there'll be things at bigger prices I'd be more tempted in. Is pretty much the long and short of what I'm trying to say. Champion chase time. This is. I think this is fairly straightforward, to be honest with you. I really, really, really think that Shishkin just dots up. And I know Nicky Henderson comes out and makes all these bits and pieces. He's a 6-4 poke, so you don't need me to say any of this sort of stuff. Would I say that I think Honeysuckle's got a better chance or Shishkin? Well, when you look at the Champion Hurdle, as I say, it would be Fernie Hollow appreciated dropping back to hurdles, which means they'd need to have faltered over fences to come back. Not necessarily the most ideal prep. I don't recall a failed novice chaser winning a champion hurdle either. So Honeysuckle looks good at the price. Shishkin would have a Nergamine to face. I don't like Shackleton didn't get up the hill. I'm happy to write that off as that, but he could have just had a bad day. It could be that he didn't travel, so I'd like to see him come over for the Tingle Creek, and then we could find out if it was the travelling or whether it was Cheltenham's Hill. I mean, Sandown's a significant enough of a finish as well, so that could be a reason. But I'd like to see Jacques and Poussoir give us a reason to why he faulted at Cheltenham, for enough for us to say let's sort of ignore him. Energumene, they are saying that they're going to go the 2 mile route with him. I know Willie Mullins wants to win a champion chase. I wasn't overly sold on Energumene last year, but the fact we didn't get to find out, semi-annoying. And you can see why people are probably going for him again, because Shishkin's just so short. But I don't know. I wouldn't want to be back in. I wouldn't want to back Energumene full stop. He's got to go and run an open company yet. And Shishkin's, like I say, plenty short enough. But maybe if you're doing the multis for the start of the season, then you could have a little pop at it. There isn't anything else anywhere else that would lure me in the slightest in terms of an interest. And I think it's just maybe that weaker division that Shishkin's just going to dot up in here unless something happens to him. Don't even care about the cross-country chase. Champion bumper, I don't really have an opinion this far out on it. There are lots of horses that win a champion bumper that we don't see until nearer the time. So Q Card was in January, the year that he won it. Champagne Fever, I think, won on Boxing Day. Briar Hill was January. Silver Concord was a couple of years, second season-y bumpery horse, like Sagard was. What else have we got? I think maybe Relegate for Willie Mullins was shown up a bit late, and then Envoy and Fernie were both seen in December. So I don't know. I'd rather wait for the bumper bets. I've heard lots of talk about a few horses in there, but not so fast. You see lots of horses like this, like Dark Raven. Willie Mullins has said is a stay-in hurdler. Iron Maximus we know is going hurdling. It's just lots of yak in there, isn't there? So leave it as it is. And even when Fernie won it, Fernie was a big price near the time, wasn't he? So race you could probably leave alone. The Marsh, understandably, why Bob Oninger's head of the market. And the performance at Cheltenham, it was not disappointed he didn't run at Punchestown. If anything, I was quite pleased that he didn't run at Punchestown, because I think it's such a good effort at Cheltenham. We had a reasonable season. Just put him back, and then let's just try and keep an eye on this horse to sort of mind him. And Henry de Bromhead often improves a horse for a fence anyway. Good to soft ground. That was the first time we got some decent ground at Cheltenham. I think that's why he was maybe looked so visually impressive. But I think he is better on the better ground. I could not put anyone off at the 3-1. The Appreciate It is holding his price basically, because Appreciate there's still the grey area that he could step up in trip, and that may happen. It may not. Probably the only reason Appreciate It would step up in trip is if Fernie Hollow smashes him. And I don't think they'd run against each other. So an Appreciate It could be an average chaser, I think, and still beat the lot over 2 miles if Fernie doesn't do it. So Bob Oninger 3-1, I don't think is a terrible price, but again, you're comparing that to the Appreciated price. I'd think that, I don't know, I'd rather be backing Bob at 3 than Appreciate at 3. And then there will be horses at bigger prices that potentially could go all right, but I'd need to see how they run as the season goes on, really. So a fairly boring one there, but there's no point me waffling on just for the sake of it. And this is just my standpoint now. Once we get some racing as the season goes on, hopefully we'll get some more opinions. Speaking of opinions, RYANAIR. love a bit of the Ryanair, don't we? This is a race that often, when it gets nearer the festival, you can look at it and think, I could still have an opinion and I could still have a bet on something at a price the week of the festival. Underso is the exception a little while back when he was fairly short. Allaho is going Ryanair. Allaho is, like I was probably up there with Appreciate as the best winner, but you'd probably argue that Allaho, because it was an open company, was the better winner. I just think with Allaho, like where they're going to go for him, I'm not 100% sure during the season. I'd like him to go for the King George, but he's the type of horse that doesn't always chuck in his best, I don't think. So I don't know. He could get beat and the price could go out on him. So like I wouldn't want to be chucking any cash on him at 7-2, to be honest with you. Envoy could be going here, couldn't he? I like Envoy. It was great to see him back. Like Shishkin ain't coming here. Energumen could, but we don't know if he will. Fakir Dudri, I still want to see them try. Like with Mellon, I want to see them step up Fakir Dudri for a Gold Cuppy trip, but you can arguably see why he's the price that he is. Chantry will be trying 3 miles again, won't he? So I think maybe he could be King George bound as well. I'm not overly sold on Chantry staying the 3 miles. I know he was so impressive at Aintree, but Espoir de Rome that fell, that was giving him a bit of a race of it, hardly has franked the form since. So who knows? Chantry could drop back, couldn't he? And obviously won the Marsh the year before, albeit only scrapping just to beat Fusel. But then Fusel goes and wins Charlie All, taking benefit of Chamblou's incidents. There's all bits and pieces, isn't there? Basically, one that didn't get a mention and one that like I'd have to hold back a little bit on, and you'd have to wait. But the Big Getaway, like I think he could run a big race in something like a Ryanair or a Gold Cup. Now, I wouldn't be suggesting betting him. Like we'd have to see, like wait for an entry or something like that. But he'd be the sort of horse that I'd be looking at for the Ryanair, thinking I want something at a big price. What could happen with him? Defi de Soy, they're talking about stepping him up in trip. They're looking potentially King George, so that's another JP horse that could go King Georgie. But you think he went in favour at whatever price it was, 1-4 or something, winning for the Champion Chase. Didn't quite work out. You'd think really the Ryanair would be a better suit for Defi. He is a 2-time Cheltenham Festival winner. Like he's semi-offensive at the price that he is. Again, maybe wait for the entry, see how he's running and see about that. But these are the sorts of horses, maybe not so much the Big Getaway, but you could see Defi having a good season. Philip Hobbs Yard's in much better form this year, and Defi did have an issue a few years back where he had that wobbly season after the Triumph win, didn't he? So he's got the potential to come back and recover himself from there. So I think there's probably, maybe at the bigger prices, I'd be more interested in stuff. Eldorado Allen did win the Howden Gold Cup. They pretty much confirmed that he'll end up in a Ryanair, I think. So did it with Q Card, didn't they? I know they're different types of horses. And Eldorado Allen ran a pretty nice racing behind Shishkin. Obviously, that was the wrong sort of trip, but Tizzards were woefully out of form last year because of the personal incidents they went through. I did that in my National Hunt trainer stats thing when I was talking about how the bigger trainers will always bounce back from it. They'll have a more prominent season. And you have to look at some of their horses that ran quite well in the face of adversity to see maybe you can upgrade a few of their performances. Now, I know it's early to be saying it, but him at 33 is like, if I was forced to say you've got 30 quid to bet, I'd be tempted to split it across some ones at bigger prices, to be honest with you. And that's sort of my stance on the race. Could come back and laugh, couldn't we, when Allaho absolutely dots up? But we know how the Ryanair fares most years. Like there's always a bit of excitement in there. Stairs hurdle time now. I wish they would put Paisley over a fence now. West Yorkshire hurdle was almost embarrassing how he was off the bridle, hitting his flat spot, then stayed on a little bit. Like they're going to fanny about with him at Ascot in the long walk hurdle, I think. But I don't think they were going to do Newbury. Wherever it is, I think they're giving him one more poke over hurdles and they might decide. Just stick him over fences would be my argument. Anywho, Time Hill, I would say 5-1. I think that's a reasonable bet, to be honest with you. Classical Dream obviously was a good winner of the Supreme when he did it, but he was the one that was out in front. He was the only clean horse that was in there. How strong that form is now, it's open to debate, I suppose. His Punchestown performance was incredibly visibly impressive, but we know he's had issues. They're talking about keeping him over hurdles because it's easier to keep him sound. Like no doubt he could go and run real well in the race, but I like Time Hill. Like I think he would have won it last year if he'd have made it there. I think 5-1's a reasonable price about him. So he'd be the sort of horse that if I was given a grand free bet towards Cheltenham, he would be very, very close to the top of the list of the one to put it on, if not top of the list. Not sold on Florian Porter. The fact that it was mentioned that he needs the guided rail on the inside, like I don't want a quirky horse like that. Like I know Big Bucks was a bit eyeballing the horses and stuff, and obviously Page with the flat spot that I quite liked, but I don't know. Repeat stayers hurdle wins just don't happen that often. Champ could drop back over hurdles like they were talking about his fencing, but yeah, it was a reoccurrence of a back issue that caused him to be well up the back at Cheltenham, apparently. He's had surgery back over in Ireland. They still think he's a Gold Cup horse. I think they'll obviously try and get some more runs into this season as opposed to what they did last year. We'll have to see. He could drop back over hurdles, couldn't he? And I can see why he'd be on people's radars. They're the sort of bets that you can back them with these cash-out offers in there. You get most of your money back anyway if they see that he's confirmed set of offences. But if he was then to go back over hurdles, he'd halve in price pretty much overnight, wouldn't he? One at a big price, Abracadabra's 33s with Bet365. Like, I'm not having anti-post bets at the moment, but if anyone is having an anti-post bet, I would strongly suggest putting Abracadabras on at 33 to 1. The step up at Aintree was a really, really nice performance. That was 2.5. I think he's crying out for a longer trip. There's always been like a nice travelly thing, but people were saying that like he was a bit quirky. You couldn't get him to go and win, but I don't know whether it maybe just lacked that tiny bit of extra pace to do it. But he's got the class about him, so you can see he's shorter with a lot of the other bookies there. 33 to 1 with cash out of Bet365 is offensive as far as I'm concerned. Like I think that is 100% a knocking bet. So if you're watching this and you want to be easily encouraged, please gamble responsibly. But you've got to have a nice single on Abracadabras for the stayers. I do think Time Hill is really, really solid at 5 to 1. So he'd be the one that I really like. But I think if I'm using this as sort of an anti-post insight and I'm talking about bets that I would be able to suggest, then I like Time Hill at 5. So like I've said, if I had a big bet on this race as a free bet, then he'd be right towards the top of the list for me to back it on. But I think Abracadabra's there, like it's just the wrong sort of price. One of those ones that you just got to loop yourself into. Mares Novice Hurdle, LS Bell runs tomorrow at Newbury. You can see why she's in the betting where she is because of where she placed in that bumper. But who knows? I wouldn't want to get involved in her too far out. Glens of Antrim's interesting. The breeding, second season Mares Novice. But again, like I would just leave the race till nearer the time. Triumph's another one that's quite tricky. Gentleman Joe for Rob Kerr. There's lots of people telling me to back him. Lots of people talk about him. So if you're the sort of person that does like the scattergun approach, then you've probably already got him on your list. And if you haven't, then maybe do it. Then there's one that Riki's bought, Gaelic Warrior. Willie Munners has talked about that running in a juvenile in and around Christmas. He mentioned another one of his new recruits as a Triumph hurdle horse, but I think this Gaelic Warrior could prove popular at some point, so it would be another one that you could back at 40s Bet365 with the cash out option when it gets through Christmas. If we've not seen him out, like he could run in the spring juvenile and then go straight to Cheltenham, but you'd think they do more like what they did with like a Mr. Adjudicator. Get a run into him at Christmas, then go for the spring juvenile. So I like it'd be the ones that maybe, like I said about these block bets, you could put a few in, or like even Fildor, like it's very short and very over exaggerated for the start of the season for a performance, but we could look back on Fildor and say 12 to 1 was a monster price at the time. These are the sort of ones that maybe you could put them in the block with the National Hunt Chase ones. Like I say, get Gentleman Joe on the slip, and get Gaelic Warrior in there as well. But as I say, I'm not punting anti-post this far out of the scattergunny approach, so I'm just sort of spitballing a little bit. Now, Albert Bartlett's a race that I've notoriously, I say notoriously, no one cares, do they? But I've done really well in the race for a long time. Things at big prices as well. We've had the year we had, you know what I mean, Harry? I think I had the first 5 home anti-post book. That shows how many I'm scattering. I've had Penhill, Kilbricken, Manila Indo. I didn't put up as my lively outsider. I put Rhinestone up, but that was kicking about in the ring. And I tried to get a message out, but anywho, Manila Indo was 50s, was too big a price based on that Allaho form, so I did back Manila Indo, had a little bit on Monkfish, and did put up Vanillier on the up in the ante or my anti-up show last year. Going back to Martello Tower, I had him at an okay-ish price with form. I think it tied him with Black Hercules maybe. So I feel like I've got a reasonable handle on the race. I like to. There's a couple of things that I do really like. I like 2 mile speed for these types of horses. Now that's not always the case. Like in recent years, Manila Indo started at 2.5, Monkfish started at 2.5, and Vanillier was 2 mile 3, I think. But Kilbricken Storm ran over 2 miles or just under. Penhill ran at 2 miles. Bobsworth had 2 miles in there. Verywood at Fisher's Cross, Brindy's Breeze. So like The horse that I really, really liked for this race was Hollow Games, and as I say, I am not doing the Antepost punting, but this is one that was hard not to back before he ran on the Friday. Like he was 33s, he was 50s in the summer. Follow that sort of route that Gordon Elliott has done to get here, but I don't think Gordon's ever won the Albert Bartlett. So as much as he might have a plot for some ones to get in there, like Fury Road was fairly close to be fair. And then, like, I think Farouk Delam would have been close had he have run, depending if he was that ground dependent. But like Hollow Games, I like him. Like of the ones that are towards the top of the market and the performance that he did, like he doesn't look quick. He looks like a nice, just a lengthening improver. I like him. And we talked about Grain Claire West, or at least I did at the top, saying that Willie Mullins suggested could be Supreme. And then you can see where that is for the price of the Albert Bartlett. Like Kilcrit's 10 to 1 fav. That's the difference between a Supreme horse and everything. Like Appreciate It was well found in the markets for all three novice hurdles last year. So Hollow Games would be like I could not put people off that in the slightest. But like I say, I do like the 2 mile speed in there. We have second season novices, so we've had I think 3 second season novices in the last 10 years maybe. So it's not a massive thing, but that's horses that have failed to win over hurdles before and then they've come out and won. That would have been at Fisher's Cross, Martello Tower, and you know what I mean, Harry that did that. So another little thing that I like to look at. So there could be some failed hurdlers from last year or before. And then like looking at the like bumper form as well for horses going in there. Now, there are a lot of horses that maybe do one and done, like Monkfish was one bumper and then went in there. Some horses go straight over hurdles, so we have a few that will go and do that and be in it. But I think you don't want a horse that's run multiple times in bumpers going for an Albert Bartlett. So again, just something else to think about this far out. That maybe like one run in a bumper's fine. Maybe a couple could be pushing it. So again, that's another negative against Hollow Games. But there isn't anything that stands out for me now. And we know with the prices of the winners of the Albert Bartlett, you could probably wait till nearer the time, find some form lines within some good horses, maybe even behind them, like with Manila Indo and like with Vanillier behind like a Farouk Delan, and then it feeds into winning form when it comes to the festival. Gold Cup. Just Trappier Fair every single year, and another one similar to like a Ryanair. Like I still think you can still get a bit of value nearer the time. Indo and the Plutarch, you've got to agree that they deserve to be where they are in the betting. I think Milena Indo again deserves to be favourite probably. Chantry House, you can see the form that goes in there. I think I mentioned on yesterday's video that third in the Supreme since the turn of 2000. I think they've all won, or they've got a really good strike rate. So he's going to be sort of not the wise guys one, but a popular choice. Album Photo would be one hell of an effort to win it twice, lose it, and then come back and regain it. He'll be a popular one at a big price as well for people just to chuck in there, but wouldn't be for me. And I know Galvin's performance was pretty good, and that would like could be end up as like a Gold Cuppy type, but I think he lacks a tiny bit of class. Like I'd like to see a bit more from him. I'd rather he went and won and back him at 10s than risk him at 20s now, if you see what I mean. And then just to some of the other horses to see what they'll do. Like Allaho's going to probably, well, I hope he comes over for the King George. Depending on how he wins, that depends, I think, on what they'll steer with him. Like I think they'll go Ryanair, but who knows? He could end up stepping up in trip, couldn't he? Eclair de Rire that I put up for the National Hunt Chase or RSA last year, or maybe it was any race. Like again, another one like a bit wise guy, like a few people are putting in there. Fiddler on the Roof. People are saying he's going to, well, might go Elaborate Trophy, might go Betfair Chase, saying that he doesn't stay. Like I think he will stay, and I touched on the Tizardy stuff. So at like a big price, like Fiddler doesn't really warrant being such a big price, I don't think. And again, it's one of those you could potentially back at a cash out, and then you could chop a few quid off. But it's not one to get too overexcited. The Big Getaway that I gave a little mention to before as well, and he's here at 60s, and I would like to see Fakir Duderies sample it as well. They talked about stepping up in trip with Mellon again. Now, I put him up for the Gold Cup last year with Delta Work. That didn't particularly work up very well, did it? But I think he needs to step up in trip. So with Album Photo for the Donnelly, maybe not being the Gold Cup horse or the strong Gold Cup fancy that he was before, maybe Mellon at 66 is another one just to get on your bet slip, because they're going to try him again at 3 miles, I think. I don't know whether they'll do it with Fakir Dudery. I think Joseph O'Brien maybe put a stable track that I haven't read, so that's pretty poor form for me. But again, like I'd just be tempted to just to hold a few quid on Mellon, and you can see what happens with entries. So it's as far as I go with that. And Fiddler as well, like Fiddler on the Reef. Like he may drift out a little bit if he runs in Betfair Chase and bombs, or if he runs in the Elaborate Trophy and bombs. But all he's got to do is run with a little bit of reasonable effort, and like he's not going to get much bigger than the 40, so you still get most of your money back. So I don't know, this far out, that'd be my sort of thought process. And then for the Mares Chase, who even knows? I think Gaulois, William Mullins has said, looks built to jump over a fence. Eddie May was so close last year. It's like she could end up being a good bet, but I don't trust the girls as much as I trust the boys, so I wouldn't want to be getting stuck in this far out. So that pretty much wraps up the Cheltenham Festival races that we can see on here, the ones that I've got a bit of an opinion in there. I appreciate that, like, everyone puts a lot of effort in there. I've touched on the Fat Jockey Forum before. I didn't want to just pigeonhole them as like a Cheltenham anti-post whispering thing. Like, they are fantastic with all horse racing as a community, but obviously the videos that I'm doing are specifically talking about Cheltenham anti-post. So there'll be lots of comments and information on there, and lots of you that will be on things at bigger prices with stronger opinions. But as I say, my betting model's changed this year. I won't be having my anti-post bets like I've done before. And I do think some of the prices are a little bit skinny in there. But on the video screen that I've done, I'm going to try and edit it before I post it to put in anything that I fancied or suggested bets on the little notepad piece of paper. And then anything that I think's a relevant comment, whether I've talked about trainers or ages or anything like that, just to sort of reiterate what I'm talking about. But again, I always appreciate your guys' support. If anybody's made it to the end of this, like, I should never say this because no one will do it, but I really appreciate your support. I genuinely do. I just make these videos because I like talking about horses. So you guys giving me a voice to put it out to is really appreciated. I'm going to have a couple of previews coming up for that Morgiana meeting and the Paddy Power at Cheltenham. So hopefully doing that with Jamie. So that'll be quite good. And then I will have a video out towards the end of November about anti-post bets. Again, going through like I'm doing here, but with things that have run that if I'm saying I think you've got to get these on your tickets just because like they're very low risk or they're the wrong price, then I'm just going to keep putting those bits of advice, or my opinion anyway, out there. So thanks again for your support, and speak soon.